So welcome, I'm here in Veldrift just outside Cape Town with an extraordinary man, and today I'm interviewing Petr Muzik, my father, who's just come back from a 3-year circumnavigation of the world. He sailed around the world on his boat for a lot of the time on his own, living his dream. He's always wanted to do it. He started in Cape Town, sailed around the world anti-clockwise and ended up back in Cape Town again. And I've got him here today just outside his house, and we're going to ask him a little bit about how it went. So Dad, thanks for being here. And why don't you start off by telling the people who are watching this, tell them a little bit about your vision and your dream to sail around the world, how it came about and when you left. Just give us a bit of background.
Well, my parents came here in 1938 from the Czech Republic, which is landlocked, there's no sea, and my mother said that I should be a seafaring man. And at the age of 9 I joined the Sea Scouts, and I also read Joshua Slocum's book, Sailing Alone Around the World. He was the first guy to sail around the world, and ever since that day I've had my dream to sail around the world. And I've only completed that dream now at the age of 69. I've built 3 boats, I went to technical college to teach myself carpentry, and now I've done it. And for anybody out there who's got this dream, whether it's 4x4ing or jumping out of a plane with a parachute or diving or whatever the dream is, my only advice to you is do it yesterday. Don't do it tomorrow, because tomorrow is too late. I did it 10 years too late. I did it, yes, I could have done it when I was a little bit younger, but the whole thing is, people say to me, why do you do it? How could you afford to do it? You must be a very wealthy guy. Not at all. The whole crux of my trip was here. It's a mental thing. You've got to say to yourself, I'm going to do it, and you must do it. You mustn't let anything get in the way. It must be a dream. It's not a financial thing. I'm not a wealthy guy, but I put it together and we succeeded. And now we're back here, and I'm here to tell you the tale.
So you had a really clear goal. Hey? Do you think it's appropriate to set goals? Is that something you...
Yes, I had a clear goal. It was a goal that I had from a long time ago. It's a goal that I've been aiming for a long time. My first boat was a small 30-footer. I then had a 33-foot racing boat, and I've now built Shoestring 3, which is a 40-foot proper cruising boat for the right boat for the right job. And yes, you have to have the right equipment. You have to plan. There's a lot of planning to be done, and that's all part of the dream. You can't just go out there and do it. You've got to actually prepare, and you've got to have the dream and be focused on every aspect of what you're doing. The preparation, the food, the navigation, the charts, whatever. You've got to have a course in electronics and repair diesel engines, all that kind of thing. Because once you're out there, you can't call 911 to come and help you.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you built your skill set, you prepared beforehand, you spent 12 years building the boat, getting all the skills you needed, and then you set off and you had everything you need to handle whatever happened. And I mean, along the way some amazing things happened, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But what was one of the most amazing places you visited on your journey?
Well, there were many, and I think of the whole trip, the Pacific was where it's all at. And the one island that really stands out was the island of Suvorov. It's a kind of a Robinson Crusoe area, where you can only get there with a yacht. There's nobody there, and we were there with 6 boats, and I spent 12 days on Suvorov, and in 15 foot of crystal clear blue water under the boat we saw manta rays and sharks and turtles, and the clams were opening and closing. The reefs were alive. They weren't dead like they are in the Caribbean or in Mauritius. The place was just teeming with, wow, with underwater life, and the bird life was absolutely marvelous. And yes, it was a place I could have spent maybe 6 months there. It was really, for me, a paradise.
Fantastic. You know, one of the things I teach people, just leading into your amazing experience of being shipwrecked, is about how, you know, on the way to your dream, you're going to encounter adversity. It's not always going to be the plain sailing, excuse the pun, all the way there. And one of the adversities you encountered along the way was you got shipwrecked in the middle of nowhere in Chagos, which is an island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and how you dealt with this shipwreck?
Well, the Chagos archipelago is 500 miles south of the Maldives, and 200 miles south of Chagos is Diego Garcia, the only American naval base. So there's nothing there, just coconuts, fresh water and fish. No people, no 911, no hardware store, nothing. And so we arrived there, and for 4 days we were anchored off the island of Takamaka to 25 knots of southeast wind, which is quite a strong wind, but the anchors held well and everything was fine. And on the 4th night, the wind swung 180 degrees to northwest and threw us onto a coral reef. at 3 in the morning I called a mayday, and I got a reply from the boat next door to me, and he said he can't come and help me because he's also on the rocks. He was also thrown onto the reef. But fortunately he got off fairly quickly, and he came to my assistance. And we couldn't get off, but I think one of the things that helped us was that it was spring low tide, and as the tide was rising, the boat tended to rise a little bit. But it was really one of the low points in my life, because the rudder broke in half. We had no rudder.
So now, just to get clear, you're trapped really. You're on an island in the middle of nowhere with no rudder, and the boat won't sail, and it's sinking.
Quite correct. Yes,
and you had no propeller because it's been bashed against the rocks too.
Correct. So we've got no propeller, no rudder, the keel's bent, and there's a hole in the boat. And at 6 o'clock in the morning I called another mayday, and by this time the floorboards were starting to float. So it was a real dangerous situation. Once the engine would have been underwater and all the electrics underwater, that would have been it. I reckon another hour and we would have lost the boat. Anyway, I called another mayday, and 2 boats came from Bottom Island, 4 miles away, and they brought a big heavy duty pump and a generator, and we managed to start pumping, and we were starting to win over the tide, and we kedged out another anchor. We threw out another anchor, and slowly as the tide rose we managed to winch the boat off the reef and anchor in deeper water. I then dived over the side with a piece of styrofoam and Pratley's putty underwater glue, and I patched this big hole. The big hole was about the size of my arms, like this. It wasn't a hole as such, because fiberglass shatters, and there was leaks all over the place. But with this foam we tied lines around the boat, and we managed to contain the leak to pumping every 20 minutes. Eventually we decided to beach the boat because it was spring high tides and spring low tides, and we effected a repair. We pooled all the materials and all the tools.
Somebody just happened to have fiberglass on their boat,
well,
right?
Every boat had a little bit of fiberglass and a little bit of resin, and on the big hole we put 8 layers of glass, and on the small holes we put 3 layers of glass. And the girls went for a walk into the coconut groves, and lo and behold, the good Lord, he put a rudder there. We found, can you believe it, we found a 9-foot dagger board from a catamaran, which we fashioned into a rudder, and which I have now done 4,000 miles with to bring me home to Cape Town.
Wow.
It's an absolute miracle.
So, you know, designer life is all about teaching people how to create miraculous lives and create miracles. And here is a man who's stranded in the middle of the Indian Ocean. His rudder is broken, his boat is sinking, he's got no engine. And on this island, which has no human inhabitants, it's not even, it's a coral atoll in the middle of the ocean, is a rudder. Like God had reached down with his hand and put a rudder there for him, which you then screwed onto the back of the boat. He sailed across the Indian Ocean for how many days?
A total of about 31 days.
31 days. He had no autopilot, so he couldn't sleep. He had 1 crew member. So you guys went for 3 hours on steering, and then you would sleep for 3 hours, and Karen would come and steer for 3 hours. And they did that for a month non-stop with a bent keel, a rudder that's a quarter of the size from a catamaran, and no engine. They sailed back to Africa from Chagos. I mean, that's extraordinary that you'd find a rudder in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, without that rudder, we'd still be in Chagos today.
Oh, no.
So that was a miracle,
wow.
And that's all the kinds of things that Bruce always talks about.
So the sun's setting here, it's getting dark. I want to, if we have one thing that you could leave our viewers with, one piece of advice, what would you give people as a piece of advice?
Live your dream. Get out there and go and do it, because this is what you were put on the earth to do the things that you wanted to do, and do them, and good luck to you.
Dad, thank you for this interview, and I wanted to take my hat off to you and say you're an inspiration. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for your adventurous spirit, and I love you.
Thank you. I love you too.